Hey everybody, welcome to Critical Q&A number 513 on this 14th of September in the year of our Lord 2025. Welcome, 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 and I am so happy to be here with you today. Again, another week, another live show. Yeah, I really do prefer doing these live, and that's been so long now that we've been doing them this way. Yeah, and it's getting a little chillier now. We're actually having some rain today, and temperatures are below the 90s. And it looks like this next week we're going to actually maybe even have temperatures down below the 80s. So the weather occurred everywhere today, and here we are. Oh, thank you, Sam Slade, for your super chat. I always appreciate your support and love of this channel, and all of you out there are perfectly free to follow in Sam's footsteps and throw me some love. I very, very much appreciate it when you all do that and support the show and support the work and support the channel. We need a lot more of that, to be honest with you, so I can get done all the things I would love to get done. Do you guys know how much I could do if I actually had some money? Oh, man. Oh, so much. There is so much. But we make do with what we have, don't we? Yes, we do. We always do. Let us get to our critical thinking cards. Let's just start the show off with a bang. In fact, let's go over to the host and chat screen so we can see you guys' comments come up on the screen as they come. I will be starting the show off with some critical thinking. Y'all know I love my little critical thinking cards, and I love to share these with you guys because critical thinking, as I like to remind people, critical thinking is not just something you read about. Critical thinking is something that you do. Martial arts is not just something you read about. If you're serious about it, it's something that you do. You practice, and you practice, and you practice, and you practice until you are good at it. You're not good at it just because you read about it. And the same applies with critical thinking. So every week I want to just start off with, here is looking for something we haven't done in a while. Yeah, that's basically confirmation bias. Yep. Oh, here we go. We have not seen any of this in the last week. This is called the self-serving bias. You believe your failures are due to external factors, yet you're personally responsible for your successes. Sort of a variation of the, fundamental attribution error. Many of us enjoy unearned privileges, luck, and advantages that others don't. It's easy to tell ourselves that we deserve these things while blaming circumstances when things don't go our way, right? Oh yes, I deserved all that good luck. It's fate, it's kismet. It's a supernatural being looking after me. Out of all the people in the world, I got a guardian angel, right? I have a guardian spirit. Hubbard thought so. So you're in good company if you think that, somebody is watching over you. All right, now, I don't mean to make too much fun, but, it just gets a little silly sometimes when people are like, we won the football game because, God, or, my surgery came out well because God. It's like, okay, or angels or whatever. Maybe the surgeon had something to do with that. Maybe the players had something to do with that. Finding me this morning in a decent mood, but a little peeved. I'm a little peeved today, to say the least. I go up and down in emotions like all of us do, but man, some of the events of the last few days and some of the chatter and nonsense that we're seeing flying around is just a bit much. Now let's get the Q&A box going, because I should have started that off right away. Please put your questions here. And let me make sure I get the A in please. Start Q&A. Good. All right, so now I can get the Q&A box up, and y'all can start throwing in your questions for me, and I'll see them on the screen there in front of me. We have... yeah, you pulled it in the other way around. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Thank you for getting right to the heart of my disagreement with that whole concept. I also have some Benson cam for you. So let us take a look over here at the Benson cam screen. There he is. There's our little bundle of furry joy this morning. He was just kind of kicking it by the vacuum, as you can see there. I just was talking to him and telling him to try to stay put this time, because he can be so antsy and run around like a little mad dog. You can see his little tail just going a mile a minute, because he's just so happy to be the center of attention. He really, really, really wanted to play, and I couldn't, because I had to get ready for the show. There's a little box of toys, so I thought, well, all right, I'll give him his favorite toy. I'm about to pull out of that box there his absolute favorite in there. This little guy here, this little squeezy guy, and this is his favorite because he plays fetch with it, and it makes all this little squeaky noise when he bites into it, and he clearly loves the sound of inflicting pain and damage on that little toy. his little Benson hunter instincts coming out, you know. So anyway, that's all kind of fun, and that's your Benson cam for this week. Just love my dog. Love him. Okay. We have 3 preset questions for this week that I've got loaded up for us that came in through the email. And I wanted to make sure to remind everybody, if you want to email me, if you have a question for me that occurs to you during the week, or, you know, you have some random thought, you're like, oh, I wonder what Chris Shelton thinks about this, you know, or what would Chris say about this? Awesome that you're thinking about me during the week. And if you are, you can email me at askchrisshelton@gmail.com, and you can send me any question you want, and odds are I'll, you know, silly enough to throw it up on the screen and answer it for you. So so feel free to do that anytime. I have a little queue that I keep all my little questions in, and there we go. So let's go ahead and kick off the show. Just getting into your questions. I really don't have... Oh, let me monologue a little bit. Because yesterday I was part of a small conference put together by Sean McCraney, called CultProof 2025. And Sean is a Christian pastor, I guess you could say. He's a little out there, you know, not your conventional Christian. And if you remember Sean McCraney, he is someone I interviewed on this channel because he is someone who is a reformed psychopath or sociopath. You know, he has diagnosis, and yet he does good work. He's kind of realized, you know, his bad ways in his past, and he was a very, very interesting person to talk to and interview. And so he organized this conference, and so I zoomed in on it and gave a presentation on my REM model. And I'm trying to still, to this day, just between us girls, I'm still trying to overcome my sort of imposter syndrome with putting out a model of human behavior. I feel like I'm, you know, putting on airs or being conceited or something, and in daring to put this sort of framework of how we act and why we act the way that we do. But I really do feel I'm right. I haven't run into anything or any situation yet that doesn't slot into this model very easily and very smoothly. And it helps explain why we act the way we do. Why do people do what they do? You know, it's a way of figuring that out. And it has everything to do with cult recruitment, cult retention, cult recovery. If you're going to have a model of human behavior, it should deal with all aspects of behavior, good and bad, and my REM model does. And remember, REM stands for reason or rationalization, and emotion, and morality. And those are the three layers through which we process and use information or belief or ideas, and how those things influence us and our identity, which is kind of the core consciousness at the bottom of the whole thing, is, you know, the who you really are down deep at the bottom. If you strip away all the emotional stuff and all the moral foundations that you're carrying around, which is impossible to do. You can't strip away somebody's moral foundations. But if you were to, you know, theoretically, what is someone after you take all the morals away and the emotion stuff away and all the thinking, and you move that, what's left? Consciousness, right? And so, you know, aware of existence, right? That kind of thing. So anyway, so that's the model, and I got a chance to break it down and do a whole slideshow talk about it. And in 2 weeks, not next weekend, but the weekend after, I'll be doing a talk here locally in Denver at the Secular Hub to break this model down as well. So if y'all are local or want to come out to Denver and see me at the Secular Hub, then you can do so. It'll be Saturday. I haven't promoted it at all, so let me do so. It'll be Saturday, the 27th of September at the Secular Hub here in Denver. Oh, thank you, Preacher, for your super chat. Very, very much appreciated. Yeah, what would Chris do? That's the question you should be asking yourself. What would Chris do? That's right. Okay. Anyway, got to talk about the REM model, and and there's going to be, and I'm just not going to shut up about it. I'm going to keep talking about it, referring to it, and kind of assuming or putting out there for you guys, you know, examples or instances where that is applicable, or where we could think about things that way, because I think it's useful, and I think it's valuable to people. When I communicate about it with people and explain it to them, they immediately start thinking and using it, and you know, sort of like lining things up according to, like, oh yeah, emotions and morals, and oh yeah, and it kind of helps people, you know, organize their thoughts around something about themselves and about other people. And the whole goal is to help people. It's not to, you know, fool them or trick them or give people tools to do so. But when you break down behavior, then of course, you know, people can take that data and do good or bad with it. One hopes, you know, that it will be used for good. But I'm gonna keep putting it out there. And we're talking about doing some workshops next year. Maybe some paid stuff, like paid workshops and things, to introduce people to it, and put some exercises together of how they might be able to understand it in their own life with themselves and with other people. And maybe as a result of that, we can assist some people in the cult recovery space, or in, you know, relationships, or in, it even would have business applications. It would be, you know, human behavior is happening wherever humans are. So a model of that behavior would be useful pretty much anywhere. It's kind of cool. Actually, I think it is. Okay, so enough about that. Let's go ahead and get over to your questions. First question of the week. Let's take that one down. There we go. Number one, from Funny Hat. This is a person, one of my Patreon supporters, who sent me 3 questions all at once, right? So I finally get into the third one here. Here we go. Do Scientologists watch the Super Bowl? By that, I mean, what is the relationship for a Scientologist with pop culture and mainstream media? Was it prohibited? Or could you and your fellow members still enjoy the hit shows, movies, sports, video games, and discuss them? Were the friendships and interactions off the clock relatively normal? I know in your Battlefield Earth review, you mentioned some members couldn't stand watching Battlefield Earth multiple times as instructed. Was this something you were able to speak about? Okay, so great question, Funny Hat. And the different levels of Scientology have something to do with this. You know, you have 3 levels to Scientology. You have the public level, you have the staff members, and then you have the Sea Org. And roughly that's the hierarchy. And so when I was a public Scientologist and when I was a staff Scientologist, you're much more in the world and you're much more world facing and interacting with the real world. You have a job and, you know, you have a car or transportation, you're getting around, you have a house someplace, you know, other than the org where you're living and staying. And so you're kind of a lot more in the world. And I was a movie buff when I was a staff member and when I was a public. I would go see midnight movies in Santa Barbara with my friend who was a Scientologist all the time. We hung out all the time, right after work, after post, we would go hang out at Caro's or, you know, Denny's or something, and we'd stay up late eating French fries and drinking Cokes and just yapping and having fun and talking about, you know, culture and popular topics and news and stuff like that. And it was very normal kind of life. Very, very much so. It looked just like anybody else's as far as that goes. I think that that's generally how most public Scientologists and staff live their lives, is they're in the world and they're aware of what's going on. They do not necessarily keep track of what's going on with Scientology on the internet. They, you know, kind of use Scientology news and Scientology information channels to keep up with Scientology stuff. But otherwise, you know, because you start Googling Scientology stuff, you're going to end up on Tony Ortega's Substack pretty quick, or, you know, my channel or something, right? So, yeah, so I would say that, you know, in almost all cases there of the public and the staff, you're going to have a pretty standard, usual kind of experience. There are absolutely, there are Scientologists, public Scientologists and staff who emulate the Sea Org or emulate what they imagine L. Ron Hubbard wants from them or David Miscavige wants from them, and ensconce themselves in a bit of a bubble, right? And don't engage too much with the world and things like that. But I think those folks would be the minority of people in Scientology, because you can't really get along in the world without being on the internet these days in one fashion or another. And almost exclusively people are getting their news and current events from the internet. So sorry, I just drink all this Coke and I can't. Anyway, so I think that's pretty much the long and short of that. Now, in terms of the Sea Org, this is where life becomes much more in the bubble, and you don't have access or freedom to access the outside world in anywhere near the same way that you do when you're public or staff. Guardrails are put on your internet access, literally your phone or iPad or however you're accessing the internet. They put software on it to exclude your ability to do searches for things that are Scientology sensitive stuff. You are discouraged, of course, from, even being much in tune with or in connection with pop culture or media or what's going on in the world, because in the Sea Org, more than other levels of Scientology, the delusion and hysteria surrounding the achievement of Scientology's goals is quite high. And they're so busy with what they're busy with that they don't give themselves time to keep up with the Kardashians or the Joneses, and nor do they care to. They really sort of, the word would be, kind of eschew or turn their back on the outside world. That's what it is to become a Sea Org member, it's a monastic attitude, right? It's the same kind of thing as what monks do, or nuns or something, go off in some remote abbey or, monastery or something and kind of disappear from the world. That's what the Sea Org is like. And so you get peeks into the outside world. You see windows into things. You may see a headline or you may see commercials advertised, or you may see a billboard or something. Or maybe, you know, when you are on the internet doing whatever internet stuff you're doing, you know, kind of keeping up with this, that interest that you have, you find out about things, but it's going to be patchwork. You know what I mean? It's going to be here and there. Because the Sea Org schedule and priorities fill your attention. They consume it, and that is by design. You're absolutely expected to have all of your attention on the Sea Org and its issues, not the outside world. No one in the Sea Org is ever going to be interested in things going on in the outside world more than they're interested in what's going on inside the Sea Org. You really do a flip on that when you go in, and that's of course the whole bubble world thing. So you know, I would never have told anybody in the Sea Org, you know, about Battlefield Earth thing, right? I mean, you just, because you're in a confession culture where you are expected to confess your sins on a regular basis, and you're in a snitch culture where if you commit sins or overts in Scientology, others are going to report you for doing so, including things you say. So if you start complaining, or what they call nattering, that's the word they use, if you natter about L. Ron Hubbard, David Miscavige, Battlefield Earth, Scientology properties, anything having to do with or connected with the church, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, because that's indicative that you have overts against the thing you are nattering about. And they take that really seriously, and you're going to be in trouble for that. So, so you learn quickly, okay, not gonna say anything. You learn to keep your damn mouth shut, you know. Hard for me, for obvious reasons. So, you know, I was getting reported on all the time on stuff. And so I was in trouble for stuff often, you know. But you learn to keep your damn opinion to yourself when it comes to, you know, negative opinions about things like Battlefield Earth. All right. Good. So let's go back to the host and chat screen here. And again, sorry, the chat just disappears. I'm not sure how to deal with that. Maybe there's a way to deal with it. I should look that up and see if there is. But anyway, let's carry on. We have a bunch of questions coming in here. So let's get to it. First one. Z News Prison Guard. Have you ever seen Donald Trump laugh? I haven't. Has anyone? Is that a sign of psychopathy? It's an interesting question. It's an interesting question. I don't know. Let's see. The relationship between laughter, humor, and psychopathy is complex. And the absence of laughter or perceived lack of genuine humor is not a definitive sign of psychopathy, but certain patterns are associated with the condition. Fair enough. I would say that it's complicated. I am not an expert in the subject of humor, and humor is an interesting, very, very interesting subject. I've always been fascinated by what is it that makes things funny to people, and what is laughter. And I'm not expert enough in it to talk about it with any degree of certainty, so I'm not going to, because it's something I would actually like to look up and learn more about. What I can say with certainty, what I can say as I sit here right now, is that humor for psychopaths, when you talk about a David Miscavige, when you talk about an L. Ron Hubbard, or a Donald Trump, you are talking about people who revel in their cruelty. They they think of themselves and their cruel attitudes that are really inherent and built into them as normal and as typical, as you know, these fools around me can't see what I can see. They don't think of the world properly because they don't see it from my point of view. I mean, actually, pretty much everybody thinks that because they have their normalized view of the world, and other people who don't see the world they do, you know, there's something off with you, there's something wrong with you, right? So maybe instead of, you know, so the feature, the point about psychopaths is the cruelty. And that's a term you can use objectively speaking, right? When people find pleasure in delivering pain and suffering to others, that's cruelty. And they find humor in that. It gives them a pleasurable experience. They find themselves feeling warm and fuzzy and powerful and influential because they can exert control and domination over other people. And that domination is what gives them a feeling of accomplishment and satisfaction and a job well done. It literally satisfies their twisted up emotional needs. And that's what you see when you see psychopaths like David Miscavige or L. Ron Hubbard laughing hilariously at the pain of others. And Donald Trump is no different from that. He is a pure, malignant narcissist. He's the purest malignant narcissist I've ever seen. And in other words, on the spectrum of narcissism, you know, all the way out to the end of complete self-involvement and no awareness or care or attention on other human beings or other life, Donald Trump is about as far down that spectrum as I think you can go. He's a very, you know, the principles and moral foundations that he operates from are appalling to normal human beings, right? Your average human being has a life experience that is radically different from the experience that Donald Trump is having. And psychopaths are like that, right? They are separate from the rest of us by the nature of their pathology. Yeah, so that's what I can kind of say about that in a short version, right? Because I don't, again, want to get off into conjecturing too much about humor. It's a really fascinating topic, and one that I've spent a little bit of time listening to comedians talk about and things like that. You know, the real professionals when it comes to humor. I figure I have a few things to learn from comedians about, you know, funny and humor. And yeah, so that's kind of what I could say about that one right now that I feel comfortable saying. So we'll just move on. Okay. Hey, hun. How's the new book coming along? Really looking forward to it. It was from reading your last excellent book that I discovered your channel. Oh, well, thank you. Hey, hun. It's moving along slowly. It's coming along slowly. I don't know how much of this I want to talk about. Sometimes it's hard. Writing is a hard thing to do. ADHD makes it harder. Depression makes it harder. And it's become clear to me recently that I have what appear to me to be depressive episodes. Low key, low grade, like kind of under the awareness almost kind of periods of time that go for weeks, maybe longer sometimes, where my motivation and desire to do things just kind of disappears for a while. It's very, very hard to overcome because I know I have desires and needs that, you know, want to be fulfilled. I want to do this work. And then, you know, you run into these mental barriers that are very, very strong. They're very powerful. It's very hard to overcome. So it's not writer's block because I know exactly what I want to say. I've got the whole thing outlined in pages and pages of notes and writings and stuff. And it just really needs to be compiled and put together. And I'm 5 chapters into this book. It's going, I'm very happy with the drafted work, the chapters that are done. I just need to get the rest of this done and overcome my internal barriers to doing it. And I'm only describing or detailing this so much because I'm wondering, you know, I doubt that I'm alone in this, you know, and it's hard because it's not just a matter of discipline. I'm a very disciplined person, to be frank. You know, I don't sit around lollygagging all day. I work my ass off every day. But it's hard to get to certain projects that require certain things from me, you know, on a regular basis. And so that's why the slows and the metering video and the tone scale video, and now, you know, my next book is just because of that. The work itself is great. I'm on, you know, I know what I'm doing, and I'm very happy with what I've put together. So I just need to, you know, somehow, I don't know yet how, but somehow buckle down and finish the damn thing. So I'm working on it. Thanks for asking. And I don't feel in any way pressured or unduly whatever by any of you asking me about any of this. I'm just being really bluntly honest with you about what's happening with getting it done. You know, it's all done in my mind. That's the funny thing, is I have it all worked out, right? But turning that into an actual physical product it's work, man. Anybody who tells you writing a book is, you know, it's work. Okay. Carry on here. Once a Witness asks, how do you help children who have watched online Charlie getting shot and dying? What can you say to them? My goodness. Jeez, Vernon, you're coming in with the real easy questions today, huh? My goodness. I'm not, I mean, you know, you're going to have to sit kids down individually, and, you know, you're going to have to explain that the world is a violent place. I mean, I don't know. My approach to dealing with the violence of the world when it comes to children, if I had a kid who I had to sit down and talk to them about this, I would need to explain to them that the world is full of different people with lots and lots and lots of different ideas. And sometimes people will disagree with each other over those ideas so strongly that they want to not only get rid of or erase the other person's ideas, but they want to actually get rid of or erase the other person entirely and remove them from the world, because they are so upset about what other people are saying or thinking or doing. And that is a harsh reality of our world that is true. And that when people give up on sorting things out between one another with talking, they resort to force and violence. And that is almost always the wrong solution. It is a solution of last resort, when your back is against a wall and there is literally nothing else you can do. That's when you resort to violence as the only way to get out of a situation that others are forcing you into. That is an ideal condition or situation. That's an idealized version of how it should be that violence happens, right? Is it's only a last resort, when you have literally tried to run away, tried to do everything you can do to avoid that violence, when it's cornering you, that's what you have to do. But until that point, you have other options. And it's essential to a successful life and a civilized life that you know those options and you take advantage of, or you utilize those options, rather than resorting to the simplest, easiest, quickest solution, which is violence. George Lucas and his whole concept of the light and the dark side of the force are useful as an analogy here, because the dark side is positioned as quicker, easier, faster, more inviting. It appears to be more powerful in the moment, because when your emotions, as you could explain to a kid, when you become emotional, when you get all energized and you can feel yourself all tensed up and ready to go, that's when your thinking and your social, your sort of thinking, maybe that's the best way to put it, right? Your feeling and thinking part of your brain shut down, and that's when you are at your most dangerous. And those are the situations that you really want to be tuned into and watching, be self-aware about, so that you don't get invited to, the dark side. Conceptually, those are the things I would try to communicate to a child about this. I have no idea if that's a good or a bad or a right or a wrong answer, but it's what comes to mind for me when you bring this up to me. So that's what I can say. Okay, let's carry on. Carol Monroe asks, hi Carol, why are the far right so desperate to claim Charlie Kirk's assassin was transgender despite the lack of any evidence? Okay. Narratives. It all has to do with narratives. The stereotypes and caricatures that the right has created of the left are often destructive, stupid, and based in what stereotypes are based in: hate, active distrust, dislike, hate. And the far right hates the left. They hate them. And they project that hate onto all the people on the left. And they have a narrative that they've created that all the people in the transgender LGBT communities are personally and morally responsible for the degradation of the United States and its moral collapse. And they associate this with religious principles often, but it doesn't have to be any more than, the flat earthers are associated with religious principles, but they don't have to be. It's the same kind of thing, right? You don't have to be a religious hater in order to be a hater, but a lot of them are. A lot of it comes out of religious or semi-religious ideas and biblical misquotes and biblical correct quotes. When you get into Leviticus and stuff, there's a lot of hate in the Bible. There's a lot that you can use in the Bible to rile up hate toward other people. It's a great book for that. And so a lot of people in the evangelical right-wing world use the Bible as a cudgel and an excuse to hate other people. So that hate has certain images, icons, symbols connected with it. Transgenderism is one of them. This is something that I've mentioned before, that Donald Trump has incited and used and constantly puts back out into the public conversation so as to rile up the cultural civil war that is happening in the United States right now. We are at a civil war at the cultural level. And there are groups of people in this country who absolutely hate other groups of people unthinkingly, uncaringly, like they just don't, there's no thinking involved in it, right? And that's this narrative. So when bad things happen, these haters have a mold that they need the story to fit. And so they'll take whatever facts, it's sort of extreme confirmation bias, right? They'll take whatever facts are presented and they'll slot them in like puzzle pieces into this picture that they know exists. They know it. They're absolutely certain that they understand the situation and everything about it. And so they expect to see ... And so they plug in all the facts into that expectation. And of course, with Charlie Kirk's assassin, those expectations have been upended in the last 24, 48 hours. And they persist in insisting on their rightness over the facts or over, breaking news about the issue because of the narrative. And the narratives are what they tell themselves, the stories they tell themselves about who the far left or who the left wing is and what they're about, a bunch of godless heathens, and, they just want open borders, and they just want, all the people on the right dead, and, they just want an open country where immigrants get to take everybody's jobs and everybody is just, sitting around at home smoking dope all day, or whatever other narratives they're telling themselves. There are probably infinite numbers of variations on this theme, but it is narrative driven. And that's what they're doing when they're trying to make facts make sense to their worldview. Their worldview is very fixed. And the more extreme on either end of, if this is a spectrum, right, that I'm sort of drawing in the air here, on either end of the spectrum, extreme belief is manifested, or you can see it by the certainty with which people insist on their narratives. They're 100% positive they're right. When I was in a cult, I was 100% positive I was right. That's what extremism is, and that's where they live. And they use Fox News and Breitbart and other hate-filled news platforms as justification and rationalization for their hate, to keep it going. The narrative has to continue to be fed with facts. And so they'll keep throwing facts, air quotes, into their worldview to reinforce that narrative that they're running with, so they can continue to feel justified as victims and as whatever else their narrative is whatever else it's doing for them, That's the answer as far as I can tell, or as I understand things. So there you go. Moving on. John, what is your favorite? I just go down the list. I swear. I just go, but, so I don't even read them first. What is your favorite fast food restaurant? Okay, so we go from that to restaurants. Let me think for a second about this one. It's funny. I don't just think about right-wing narratives and hate speech, but I have to think about what my favorite fast food restaurant is. for the longest time it was Carl's Jr., but that was years ago. I have been so disappointed in fast food in the last many years. McDonald's has disappointed numerous times. Of course, you know about Taco Bell, right? I mean, I'm going to say Taco Bell, actually, because it's the one that I kept going back to, and it took me 5 bad visits in a row before I finally, like, kicked the Taco Bell habit. No, Arby's. Yeah, Arby's is okay, but not my favorite. I would say it's Taco Bell. You know, in this ideal world, if I could be, you know, 30 years younger again than I am now, right, I'd probably be down at Taco Bell all the time, right? I can't deal with that food now. Okay, let's turn that off and let's go back over to our question screen and pull up question number 2. I don't want to forget about these. This one, here we go. David Brown asked, I've recently been watching videos commenting on the TLC show 1,000-Pound Roomies. While TLC is frankly known for trash TV, and this show in general seems like milking the format of their more successful 1,000-Pound Sisters, it's notable that one of the 2 protagonists of the show is a survivor of a Christian cult. And this comes up not infrequently for reasons that are likely obvious to both of us. And, I didn't include it in the question here, but David said, you know, what were my thoughts about this? Okay, so I wanted to use this question not to comment on 1,000-Pound Roomies or overweight people, but to talk about the fact that trauma lives in our body, and trauma emerges in many, many, many different ways for different people under different circumstances. And weight gain or weight loss are often things that you can connect with trauma. You cannot predict how a person is going to manifest their trauma. You can't look at a kid 4, 5, 6 years old and know with any certainty at all what they're going to be like 20 or 30 years from now because of what you're doing to them today, right? But you can know that if you are traumatizing that kid and creating an abusive environment in which you're raising them, you can be almost guaranteed that something bad is going to be happening. There are going to be bad consequences or effects of that trauma. Duh, right? That's why we call it trauma. It's traumatizing. Weight gain and weight loss are certainly manifestations of that. So are other, laundry list of self-destructive habits and routines that people develop because of their trauma. And personality disorders develop out of this. Just very, very non-ideal, non-optimum conditions. So I looked very, very briefly into the 1,000-Pound roomies thing. And yeah, there's this woman who, goes on at a mad rate, often apparently about, being raised in a Christian cult. She has apparently not identified which one. And apparently there was an episode where she got to confront her pastor or something. I think when trauma is being used as entertainment, it is not good for the people who are being exploited, and it's not good for the audience. And I think that is what makes TLC shows like 1,000-Pound Roomies trash TV, and I will absolutely call it trash TV. I don't think it's a good thing to be exploiting people that way. You can't put the unusual on display the way P.T. Barnum or old freak shows did in the 18 and early 1900s and call yourself a good person. That's not good behavior. That's not moral behavior. That's not helpful to anybody. It's looky-loo, vaudevillian evil kind of entertainment. And people who find that entertaining have something really wrong with them. I'm going to be totally judgmental about that, today, because I think it's a sickness that we have in our society, that we judge and laugh at the freaks in our society and put them on display as though this is normal, good behavior to do to other human beings. It's really, really a sign of how degraded our society is that shows like, 1,000-pound roomies even exist. But the fact that you put somebody there who has as much trauma as they have and talk about a cult experience they had, sure, of course. I mean, hardly a surprise. Not sure what else I can say about that. That's very intelligent, so I'm just going to move on. All right, going back here and go to the next question. Just going to popping through these things here today. Here is the entire country of Luxembourg asking me, does the REM model have anything to do with REM sleep? No, it does not. Not in any way, shape, or form. They share the same initials. If anything, and I thought of this when I first put the model together, of course, I thought to myself that if anybody asked me about this, I would say, yeah, the REM model wakes you up to what's really going on. It's a little Hubbardarian of a phrase to use, right? But I use it, so that's what I'll say about that. Okay, Pi Nigran asks, how was the food in the Sea Org and in the RPF? The food was awful. Yeah, the Sea Org food sucked. Let's see here. Remember, folks, if you have questions, I see some questions coming in on the regular comments. You got to get them in the question box so I can throw them up on the screen and answer them. I can't answer them, or I choose not to, from the regular comments box. Okay, so food in the Sea Org and in the RPF was generally substandard. It was a shoestring budget for a crew of over 1,000 people. We had a galley crew of 5 or 6 people making food for all of those folks. Maybe 10 people all together down in the galley, right? Between the cooks, the line cooks, the chief steward, and serving the food, by the way, too. Not just cooking the food, but also having to get it up to us. We were fed in, galley style eating, on a buffet line, kind of serving line. So, it was first come, first serve. The food was often out for long enough that it would become cold by the time, we got to it, especially on the RPF where we were last served, the last people being served food. So it was often leftovers or what was left over from the main meals. It wasn't left over in that we were getting scraps off other people's plates who had already eaten it. It wasn't that bad. But it was the last of the food that had been made. And so, they have X number of people they're going to feed. They make X amount of food, and here's what's left, right? And that's what we would get. Eggs, I hated eggs. For years after I left the Sea Org, I could not eat an egg. I love eggs now. Now I know how to cook, and I'm a decent cook, and I've taught myself how to cook, and I love making up some great eggs, right? And I can spice up eggs like, I know how to make food now. And the food we were being served was just, it was utilitarian. It was like, here's some food to keep your body going. We were one step up as far as I'm concerned. We were one step up from, Matrix food. If you all saw the Matrix, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, so it was pretty gross stuff. I wouldn't wish it off on anybody. I would not wish Sea Org food off on anybody, unless you're talking about the Sea Org food on the ship, on the Free Winds. They serve good food. I never went to the Free Winds. I just heard about it, but I had a number of people over the years tell me about how amazing the food was on the Free Winds. So, that's what I can say about that. All right. Once a Witness Vernon asks, Do you think the online murder of Charlie has to be taken down because it will be used in the prosecution of the defendant? Well, good luck with that. At this point, right? It's been days of having this stuff online. I don't think it's going to help the prosecution or the defense as far as that video goes. I don't know. Legally, I don't know how to answer that question, Vernon. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I I don't think that there should be video of online of murder or violence of that kind, because I don't think kids should be seeing that, and I frankly don't think anybody needs to be sitting around watching that. I was talking to my wife the other day about those old Faces of Death videos. Remember those that started coming out in the 70s or 80s? And it was videos, VHS tapes about that showed clips of people being killed in real life, accidents, animal assaults, or attacks, shark attacks, lion attacks, bear attacks, things like that, that people had captured on video, and they compiled these things and put them out on videos. They called it Faces of Death, and it was another one of those, 7 signs of the apocalypse, that shit like that's happening and people are, hungrily eating it up. But that's what happened. And I kind of look at, a video like this of somebody being, murdered on air as similar. If you're sitting around watching that stuff, it's rather ghoulish, is the term I think that is most fitting for people who are drawn to watching stuff like that. Yeah, don't think that's a good thing. Okay. But I couldn't comment on that legally in terms of its use or, in the prosecution. Okay, Anthony Spurgeon. There's an Australian guy named Graeme Craddock who was a Branch Davidian and survived the siege, who still defends Koresh. Would you interview him or someone like him, and is there any value in that? I would speak with such a person off camera. I would not speak to such a person on camera, because it would put them in a position of needing to publicly reinforce or defend their position. And so they would not in any way, shape, or form be motivated to want to have an intellectual or honest conversation about the topic. It would be more debate style, because that's how the person would be approaching this. Because clearly somebody who survived Waco and still defends Koresh is somebody who has had a long string of arguments with people and is just solidified in that position. And I don't know that it would be very useful or informative to interview somebody like that, only to hear, their sort of pre-recorded thought-stopping cliches and justifications and rationalizations, and just turn on the tape player and here we go, right? Because this is how they have learned to defend themselves in their position over all these years. And I would want to have a more honest human conversation with such a person and dig in, and maybe, with some street epistemology style questioning and stuff, right? And I don't know that doing that on camera would be a productive thing for that person, for Graeme, right? So I can't, that's my initial response, right? Maybe somebody could change my mind about that, but I don't see the utility in it, and it doesn't seem like it would be a, productive thing to do. I could be wrong, maybe I'm coming at it from the wrong perspective right now, but that's how I see it. Okay. Robert Tobias. I just recently started watching the YouTube channel, The Good Liars. It is fascinating, as you can witness in real time, Trump supporters displaying. Okay. Sorry, just looking to see. Oh, and then here's a follow-up to it. Displays of extreme non-critical thinking skills. Have you seen this channel's content? I have not. I'll have to look that up. I have not seen or heard of that channel. Sorry, Robert. I wish I had, so I could give you some rundown on that, but I've not seen that. The Good Liars. Okay, cool. Check that out. Okay, Sam Slade. A little medley here. 1, although LRH was overweight, is obesity discouraged in public members? 2, how do auditors handle homosexual feelings among Scientology members? 3, are Sea Org members serving as personal aides to whales? Okay. 1. I never saw or heard of anyone being confronted about their weight in the Sea Org. I saw people being disciplined for a lot of things. A bad appearance certainly is one of them. People were certainly castigated over their appearance in the Sea Org. And I saw jokes made a couple times, a handful of times, by senior executives coming down like on an ethics mission or something, who are going to publicly shame and humiliate people over their appearance or their conduct, because that's what they're doing. They're putting heads on a pike, right? They're making an example out of people. And so I saw jokes being made at people's expense over lots of personal issues. And if, they were a larger person, then that could be one of them. But that's as far as I ever saw that go in the Sea Org. I saw one person who was on a program, some kind of ethics program regarding their weight. So maybe one time. But in terms of the public, this is all Sea Org. In terms of obesity discouraged in public members, no, I don't think it is. I never saw anybody getting in trouble over their weight in Scientology at the especially at the public level. So no, I don't think so. If anybody, experienced something different than that, I'm the last person who's going to say that didn't happen. I mean, maybe, you guys know of instances of public shaming or humiliation around weight, and some instances of, really coming down on the person and, hey, you really need to lose the weight. You look embarrassingly bad, right? But I never saw anything like that. Nothing's coming to mind for me right now on that one. 2, how do auditors handle homosexual feelings among Scientology members? Okay. It's been a while since I've broken this one down, so let's talk about this real fast. It's a few things, but it has to do with, it all circles around a couple of different concepts or sort of ways of approaching homosexuality in Scientology. One is evil purposes. This tends to be the go-to. There's a lot of work done on people in Scientology around evil purposes. And this is because they have a procedure called the false purpose rundown, which seeks to not only pull your overts, your crimes, but also dive deep, deep, deep down to get what is the underlying evil purpose that's prompting you to commit all these overts. And until you get that evil purpose pulled, the idea in Scientology is that it might be like a, how would it be like? It's like a toothache. Right? You have a toothache and, you can put ice on it, or you can, put painkiller on it or whatever. You can do different things to deal with this bad tooth, but until you pull it, the pain's not really ever going to go away. Right? Or it could always come back. The source of the problem is still there. That's how Scientologists think about evil intentions and homosexuality, is that you can do an OW write-up, you can sit and write reams and reams of overts that you've committed as a homosexual, doing homosexual things, but until you get the evil purpose that's prompting you to commit those overts, you're going to keep doing it, or you're going to feel compelled to do it. So FPRD, false purpose rundown auditing, is often used as an approach to dealing with homosexuality. If the person has the money to pay for it and is, set up for it, because you don't go right into FPRD, you usually need, some setup auditing first. You wouldn't walk in off the street and do that kind of thing. You'd have to, have had some auditing under your belt first. One of the reasons being that in FPRD auditing, you have to go past lives, deep. You got to go way back, right? So you have to have the ability to do that in your auditing, right? You have to have had enough auditing to believe you have had past lives and that you're willing to create pictures and imagination, imaginative events of your past lives in order to be able to get this auditing, is probably the more accurate way of saying that, right? The other thing is you could deal with this auditing wise through valence, what's called valence shifting processes. And that's a different approach, where the idea is that you are trapped or caught up in some kind of personality or personality type, like a gender type, that doesn't belong to you. It's somebody else's personality, and you're wearing it like a suit of clothes. And you're being this other person. And you don't even know you're doing that. It's often because you've committed overts against that person, but it also could be because they suppressed you, or because of some other twist up in the relationship where you now feel you have to take on the valence, which is the Scientology word for their personality. You have to take that on and assume that. And so if you're homosexual, you are assuming the wrong valence. And it's, another way of approaching the problem, right? Isn't it fascinating? Isn't it fascinating and interesting how Scientology tells you over and over and over again that they will not evaluate for you or tell you what to think about your case in or out of session? This is right out of the Auditor's Code. I just quoted it to you. Yet, if you're homosexual, there are only these two ways, maybe three ways. There's one other optional route you can take, which is called expanded Dianetics, which is just another way of dealing with evil purposes and out of valence behavior, right? As you can do this expanded Dianetics rundown. So any of those will address homosexuality as far as Scientology is concerned, but it's funny how they lay that on you, that if you're homosexual, those are the things that must be wrong with you. It can't be that you were just born this way. No. They are going to evaluate for you and tell you it's these things. And they're going to charge you thousands and thousands of dollars to do auditing in this style, in the FPRD or XDN or valence shifting stuff, and other lesser grade processes that could be applied, by the way, as well. There's a ton of processes that you could bring to battery, on a person to address these things, right? And you could spend thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands easily just working on this in Scientology. So that would be that one. And 3 are Sea Org members serving as personal aides to whales. Yeah, Tom Cruise, certainly. John Travolta probably has some Sea Org members in his life. I mean, the VIP celebs, You know, the VIP whales, they probably have some Sea Org members around. I can answer this question with a definite yes because of Tom Cruise. I'm not 100% on whether other celebrities have those same Sea Org members in their lives, but I'm pretty sure they do. Pretty sure, right? But probably not, probably no one has it to the degree Cruise has it. But I think I don't think it's just him who has Sea Org members in his life. Okay. Let's go to the third and final question on the question box, on the preset questions here. This is a tough one. It's a long one here, but let me go for it. All right, so this is from a person, I'm just calling them B because they wanted to remain anonymous. And I've removed some bits from their question. This is a long one, but I actually took a bunch out that would have identified who they are and identified their abuser as well. And I didn't want to do that for this question to be able to answer it. So here we go. B, can you tell me why some Sea Org members become abusive even though there is no pressure on them to be abusive? I am trying to understand the abuse I received. And she then proceeded to tell me very specifically about years of abuse that she suffered under an RTC representative at one of the Sea Org bases. She often threatened me with sec checking and kept me in a constant state of fear and anxiety for several years. Why did she treat me this way? No one was putting pressure on her to do so, as she and the other RTC rep were the most senior people there. What influenced her to behave in that way towards me? When she first arrived, she was not so bad, but became increasingly cruel as the years went by, and always far more so when she would return from a trip to the INT base. Was she trying to emulate COB, or was she enjoying having the power to torment another person? I really don't understand. She had a card up in her room from her mom, and she seemed like a kind and loving person, so I doubt it was due to a difficult upbringing. B, I get it. Let me tell you about myself a little bit here in answering this question, because I feel this might help answer it. When I was still a staff member in Santa Barbara, I was trained at a Sea Org base on doing course room supervision, being a Scientology teacher, right? Being in the classroom and overseeing students studying. Supervisors in Scientology are told that they are to run their course rooms tough and hard, and that a tough course room, a standard course room, fills up, and that a non-standard course room empties out. This attitude is not just in course rooms, but also is in executive policies about how to be a Scientology executive. Rough, tough, hard, ethics presence, symbolism, putting heads on a pike, exerting more force over a person than their bank, so that you are more of a threat to the person than their reactive mind is, so they will do what you tell them to do rather than listen to their bank, right? I'm using Scientology terminology here, but these are all concepts that are taught to every single Scientology executive. I'm quoting from various policies that Scientology executives read from. And the point is that supervisors in course rooms are supposed to be tough-ass motherfuckers, and so are Scientology executives. They read, similar policies telling them to be similar ways. Badass, tough motherfuckers, right? So, and Hubbard hinges the success of the organization or the area on how tough they are and how, strong they are in enacting their will, so to speak, right? And bring it all the way back down to basic concepts of where Hubbard, creates Scientology from, enacting one's will against others. So this is kind of in the DNA of Scientology is the point I'm making. It's all there in the policies and issues that we read. You know, you don't have to like reach very far to find out where does this, you know, badass motherfucker attitude come from. It comes from the policies. And that creates a group think, a culture attitude that this is how we are supposed to be. Ruthless, right? Unstoppable, dominating. That's a, you know, that IAS, right? Ruthless and right? Like we're gonna take the world. When I was a supervisor, I was trained with this attitude. And I did not have a full expanding course room. Therefore, I must not be tough enough. I must not be a standard supervisor. Because a tough standard supervisor has a full course room. Always. That's what it says in the policies. Therefore, if you don't, you can't be tough and you can't be ruthless, right? Because look, so I would be sent down to Los Angeles where I was trained at a Sea Org base for correction. I'd be called down to LA. Hey, your course room's not filling up. You're not getting the job done. Go down, get corrected. And I'd go down to the base and I'd get all hyped up. I'd read all the policies and I'd drill and I'd practice and I'd be a monster. I'm a tough supervisor. I'm going to talk to you. What's your word? You better get your word. What's your misunderstood word, right? You better do those demos. And I got a clipboard and I'm checking off everything I'm supposed to be doing with all the students every day. And I'm a tough ass motherfucking course room supervisor, right? And I would get back in this mode and I would be sent back to my org. Because I'd show up there and I'd be like, you know, in tears. My course room's not filling up. I'm doing everything I know how to do. I'm trying to be tough. I'm trying to be ruthless. I'm sending people to ethics. I'm calling the roll at exactly the time I'm supposed to, on the dot. You know, I had a watch. I'd have it timed out to the second. I mean, I was really very exacting in how I tried to be a tough course supervisor, and it wasn't working, and I was really at my wit's end. So I'd go down, do this correction, and they would ask me, the Sea Org members who were doing the correction one for one every time, would ask me, you know, well, what about the rest of the org? What's the rest of the org like? And it's so slack there, and nobody, you know, we hardly have any staff, and, you know, we're not getting any new people in, and, you know, so they're not even selling any courses, you know, and my course room's not, it was supposed to magically fill up because I was such a tough supervisor, right? And that ignores that nobody's getting signed up for courses. Nobody's even trying to sell courses because nobody's walking in the goddamn front door, right? But somehow it's all my fault that people aren't magically just showing up for course. So I would lament this and I'd be like, and they'd be like, you know, and the Sea Org members would be like, your whole org is just out ethics, right? You just got to be tough. You got to be tougher. You got to be tough with the staff as well as with the public. You know, yeah, you got to send your students to ethics when they're late, and you got to be a ruthless, tough supervisor and get their misunderstood words. But it sounds like your staff are out ethics too. You know, you need to get KSW in. You need to like be writing reports, and you need to be making, you know, raising hell. That's what you need to be doing. And so I would go back to my org after going down to these trips. These cramming correction trips is what they were called, cramming, right? I'd come back and I'd be a complete fucking asshole to everybody because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. I hated it. I'm not good at it. I couldn't yell and scream. I couldn't, you know, make myself do that. I'd go back to my org in Santa Barbara And the people I'm working with are the people I'm seeing every day, all day. These are my friends. These are my fellow staff members. And I start getting all pissy with them and writing reports and you're not working hard enough and doing all this stuff and basically being a complete asshole. And after about a week or two of this, my senior would come sit me down and go, what the hell is going on? Why are you being such an asshole to everybody? And we'd have some tearful conversation about, well, I went down for the cramming and I'm supposed to come back. I'm supposed to be hardcore. I'm supposed to be tough. And she'd be like, yeah, you're supposed to be tough with your students, not with the staff. But they told me they don't know what they're talking about. And I'd be in this constant fight between what the Sea Org was telling me to do and what the fellow staff were telling me to do. And the staff weren't building the org and making it expand, but they were nice to each other. We were nice to each other. We were friends. We would go hang out. We would, be staff and try to get the job done and try to get along and try to be nice to each other and try to actually apply all the Scientology, which includes the Scientology that says to be in ARC, right? To have affinity for your fellow man, right? To be in communication, to find common reality, right? That's what ARC is all about. And not be yelling and screaming and writing reports on your fellow staff members, but working with them to get the job done. But the job never got done. I mean, the place just never filled up. And it was this constant push, pull between be harsh and be a Scientologist. Be a harsh Scientologist, be a good Scientologist, right? And this was a double bind of magnitude. It was huge. This huge problem that I was constantly in the middle of. And this was one of the reasons I ended up joining the Sea Org, is because I just couldn't take it anymore. I was like, well, I'm being nice and I have all these friends and I have this and I'm on staff and we're working our guts out trying to expand the org and make it happen, but it never happens. The public don't come in. We can't sell enough. We can't get enough staff. We can't get this thing done. And I guess that means we would kind of secretly acknowledge to each other in some moments of unguarded, friendliness and compassion for each other. We would kind of admit, well, I don't know. I don't know what we're doing wrong, but we can't seem to make this work. We can't seem to make this org grow. And it was very, very frustrating. And at 25 years old, I decided, well, I guess I'm just not being tough enough and I'm not in a tough enough environment. So I need to go join the Sea Org and take responsibility and really, double down on this so that we can make a go of it and Scientology can expand. I hope all this makes sense. This is, my whole staff, 8 years in a nutshell. And it sucked. And it was this push-pull between being the asshole staff member that the Sea Org wanted me to be and being, a human being was a constant struggle. All of this is what comes to mind, B, when I read your question. Because I'm pretty sure the person you were having a hard time with was caught up in the same dynamic. Especially when you mention in your question that it would be especially bad when they would come back from the int base, I'm sure. Just like it was especially bad when I would come back from a Sea Org base and be all get up and go, because at the base, the Sea Org members are giving you permission to be the worst version of yourself, and they're calling it ethical. They're saying the only way for you to be ethical and productive as a Sea Org member or a Scientologist is to be the worst version of yourself. To be ruthless, not compassionate, not helpful, demanding, overbearing, and even cruel. That's what they want you to be. And that's what they want their Sea Org executives to be. And that is absolutely a legitimate description of what David Miscavige wants his RTC reps to be. So that all is the answer I have to this question of why this person was this way. And it wasn't due to any difficult upbringing or some personal pathology she had or anything like that. It's a product of the Scientology environment. It's what it is to be in a cult, is that who you are isn't ever good enough. You have to be this other version of yourself that is more reflective of who the founder or the leader is. And they want you to become a mini me of them and treat people the same way they treat people. And that's one of the worst things about cults, is that they do this to people purposefully and really dedicatedly. Like, they really pour on the coals on this whole thing I was just telling you all about, right? And there's an intense amount of humiliation and shaming and blaming all around this that goes on with this, that convinces cult members that they need to become something else than who they really are. And be that way towards other people, because, and this, all of this that I'm laying out for you right now, all of this is addressing or is living at that moral layer of my REM model. It's rewriting your morality so that cruelty is good, right? Being an asshole is being a good person under that moral system. And that's what I mean when I say that cults rewrite your moral foundations, is they literally turn evil behavior into necessary and good behavior. And they take compassionate, tolerant behavior and they reframe it as being reasonable and bad, right? Reasonable in Scientology is a bad word, right? If you're reasonable, you're finding reasons to not follow orders. So that's what I have for you. I hope that is useful in answering that question. Yeah. All right. Where's my, there it is. Okay. Let's get that off of the screen there. All right. Let's carry on here. I like that answer. I hope that came across well, because I really like that one. I thought that was a good answer. Okay, let's carry on here. Ms. Tara Green. Okay, here we go. Charlie. Turning Point USA was founded by Charlie Kirk and Bill Montgomery. Kirk said gun deaths were a price worth paying and was shot. Montgomery said COVID was a conspiracy and died of COVID. Is karma real? Yeah, one wonders, right? One wonders. I actually pulled up today, because I figured somebody was going to ask me about this. So I pulled up a bunch of quotes that Charlie Kirk had voiced. So let's go ahead and talk about this real fast, because I want to get this out of the way. And Charlie Kirk is on the minds and lips of everybody right now in America for reasons that actually completely are ludicrous. Charlie Kirk does not deserve anywhere near the amount of attention or homage or honors that are, being flooded his way by the right wing. They, like I mentioned earlier in this show, they have narratives, and Charlie Kirk definitely plugs into their narratives as this holy figure who is now sainted and, with Jesus and all of this. I've seen so many, memes and nonsense about this man. This is exactly what he said on this question. Tara and everybody. He said, quote, "We must also be real. We must be honest with the population. Having an armed citizenry comes with a price, and that is part of liberty. We need to be very clear that you're not going to get gun deaths to zero. It will not happen. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment." So all I'm going to say right now, so that I don't go into anything that I might later regret, is I'm going to say that Charlie Kirk died his truth. The other thing that I had to share about him to kind of get right to the point and move on. I am not in support of what happened to Charlie Kirk, but Charlie Kirk was in support of what happened to Charlie Kirk. That's what I got. I mean, I could go on a whole fucking roll, but I'm not going to. Okay. Carry on here. George Smiley. Do Scientologists believe that people in RTC have done OT levels above OT 8? Or do they think they are following Hubbard's instructions not to release them now? Oh, yeah. Okay. No. No, I don't think so. I didn't think that David Miscavige... Oh, hang on. Hang on. See, in order for Scientology to work, somebody's got to do 9 and 10, right? OT 8, OT 9 and 10. Like, how are they going to be released? Somebody has to have done it. Same thing with OT 8, right? I mean, somebody must have done it first, right? I had the idea that David Miscavige would have, of course, done OT 8. Would have been one of the first to do it, you know, way, way back. I had no idea how wrong I was, but I thought that that was the case. Yeah, I thought the upper level guys had access to and were doing the upper stuff. Yes. I don't know what other people thought about that, though. I have been surprised to learn that I had ideas or things I thought everybody thought in Scientology that, no, it was just me, you know. So I can only speak to myself on this one because I don't remember ever having a conversation with other Scientologists about this particular specific thing, right? I kind of doubt that most people in Scientology think Miscavige has done OT 9 and 10. Yeah, I don't think they think that. Pure conjecture. Don't know. All right, let's carry on here. My goodness, it's already 1:30. I can't believe how fast time flies. I'm actually sitting here trying to just bang through these things too. And the time just flying by. Apple cider vinegar. If you met your doppelganger, what would you say or do, or what would you say to your teenage self? Oh, geez. Oh, geez, man. I mean, I imagine if I met my doppelganger, I'd probably be more like, it's me. And then I might run in terror because I don't think I'm very good looking. I can't stand this. You know, or what are we doing in the same room? We're going to make each other, you know, we're going to, as is, right? We're going to explode each other like Time Cop, right? Or what would you say to your teenage self? I'd tell my teenage self to get a goddamn clue before it's too late, right? Do some fucking critical thinking for once, you moron. You can kind of see what kind of mood I'm in today, by the way. I answer some of these questions. Yeah, no, I mean, you know, yeah, I think I've said before, I would try to, you know, tell myself that I have a lot to learn and that that I need to slow the fuck down, right? Just slow it down. Just bring the levels down. You got a lot of time ahead of you. Think, plan, do some planning, do some thinking before you dive into this nonsense that you're running headlong into at warp speed, right? Just the Scientology staff thing, even the Scientology thing, you know, like, why are you doing this? Why are you actually doing this? That probably would be my approach. I don't think I would try to lecture my earlier self. If there's anything I've learned over all these years, I think I would go back and I would simply ask myself a question along those lines. What is it you think you're doing? That would be a good question to ask myself as a teenager. That would have incited a lot of thinking on my part. Because I was doing very little thinking when I was a teenager. I thought I was so fucking smart. I really thought I just really had it together. And I did not, right? And if somebody had come along and popped that bubble, I could have had a very different life. Don't know if it would have been better or not. Don't know, you know, but it would have been different. Wouldn't have had Scientology in it. Yeah. Anthony Spurgeon, what was the first moment in the Sea Org when you had the thought, this isn't what I signed up for? Oh boy, that just set off a whole chain of memories. Now I gotta find the basic on it, right? Now I gotta find the first one. Isn't what I signed up for. I think it was on the EPF. Right away. I wasn't digging it. And it was the clothes. It was the fact that we had to wear these uniform parts that had been cycled through. Everybody was wearing everybody else's clothes. I mean, you'd have you'd get a set of shorts and a shirt, and they were generically part of the EPF space, and they'd get, you'd wear it, and then they'd get into the laundry, and then the next day you'd get maybe those, or you get another set of clothes, right? And something gave me the ick about that, right? Like, I'm wearing, clothes other people were wearing, I don't know, something about that. Just, like, ugh. That was, I think, the first moment, because that was literally like within the first 48 hours of arriving on the base. Because you understand, I didn't join the Sea Org happily. I joined the Sea Org out of duty. And my concept of responsibility at the time. I knew I was getting into something that I really didn't really want to do, but I didn't see I had any moral choice. I had to do this for the good of everybody, including myself, of course, but really for everybody else. And I needed to do this because I couldn't live with myself if I didn't, kind of thing, right? It was that kind of an approach. But I knew there were going to be a ton of things about being in the Sea Org that I was not going to like. And, and it was little things like uniform parts and not owning things and the sort of offhand cruelty of the environment that I found myself in, that casual cruelty, maybe I should say, that really turned me off right away to what was going on. Okay, Young Matador. Hey, Chris, the Headleys recently said that as SO members, their only free time was CSP laundry time on Sunday mornings, where they might be able to get extra sleep. Did you manage to do the same? Yeah, Oh yeah, absolutely. Sunday mornings were definitely a time on the base when you could have a little bit of free time. Um, that's when we go up to the grocery store and get some shopping done. Maybe get a few snacks for the week or something and have them in your room. Um, yeah, absolutely. Would get some extra sleep. Yep, definitely would take a nap or something on Sunday morning after the room was clean and inspected and all that was kind of out of the way. Um, yeah, 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 I did that. Absolutely. My wife and I did. Um, we might do, my wife and I at the time would maybe, I would go off base to the grocery store and get some things and come back, and we would do what we called a carpet picnic, where we would eat on the floor of our dorm room and have a little, picnic or something, my wife and I, right? This was literally about the only personal time we had together during the week. Yeah. So, yep. Okay, George Smiley. Did you encounter a lot of nostalgia among Scientology public for the missions or some aspects of the past Scientology, despite the pressure to view today's Scientology as pure? Oh, interesting. Not a lot of nostalgia, but some. I would run into it from time to time. People talking about the good old days, people talking about the 70s, the boom period, the old concourse days, the days they got in when it was, wild and crazy. And, you hear some of these stories, you just be like, man, Scientology must have been untethered in the 70s because it was really locked down by the time I got around in the 80s and 90s. It was like a very controlled environment. But they seem to indicate it was a little bit freer and a little bit looser, at that level back in the 70s. And they would talk about that. There'd be some nostalgia for those days. Those ethics wasn't as serious. And they would tell these stories in kind of laughing ways, or, the wild stuff people would get up to. There was somebody who even insinuated one time something about like sex parties on the boat, right, on the ship. And which was inconceivable to me as a Sea Org member, but somebody put it out there one time and I was like, really? Yeah, let's see. My dad, my dad would even throw that stuff out there often. When he would cite his disaffection with the church and its institutions, he would talk about, how back in the day, back in my day, yeah. All right, apple cider vinegar. You said violence is a last resort. Is it the resort when dealing with fascists? Did Kirk get Mussolini'd? No, Kirk was murdered in plain sight by somebody who was an unhinged lunatic. And if Charlie Kirk was not someone who walked around with a gun shooting people. He was not someone who tortured people in his basement. He did not have national legislative power. He was a propagandist. He was paid an awful lot of money by very rich right-wing conservatives to do what he did, which was run around the country riling up hate towards minority groups, towards women, towards the irreligious. That's what Charlie Kirk was. He dedicated his life to being a propagandist. And he was very good at his job. And he really went way out of his way to make people mad at him. He enjoyed drinking the tears of liberals, right? That was his thing. He got off on it. He found personal satisfaction and pleasure in riling up and inciting people into anger and hatred. He loved doing that. It was his jam, so to speak. But he was a talker. He talked and talked and talked, and the things that he said were not worth listening to. At the end of the day, he was a hate-filled religious bigot. And he did not deserve to be murdered publicly because of who he was. He had opinions and ideas that a lot of people disagreed with. That doesn't make you, that's not a terminal condition, and it's not a capital crime. And it's not treason against our Constitution or against our country to run around the country doing what he did or saying what he said. He didn't break laws that I'm aware of. He said things of an incendiary nature to piss people off and to rile up a group of people to hopefully take action of some kind, political action, legislative action, and perhaps violent action against people that Charlie didn't like. Minority groups, women, things like that, right? His political enemies, as he would have called them. So violence was not called for against Charlie Kirk in any way. It's not justified in any way to have done what was done. Nope, not any way at all. What Charlie Kirk needed was an honest, serious debate, or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10, and to be put down intellectually, to be put down on the playing field he liked to play on, which is the battlefield of ideas. And when people can't do that, they don't have the skill set or the means or ability to do that, they resort to violence. And that's wrong. And when people are traumatized by actual violence in the world done against them or against other people, and their justice needs are being riled up, then they start blaming people who are saying words for, the actions people take. And they go, I gotta take that guy out, right? And there we go. Here we are. What I can say about that right now. Mussolini got Mussolini'd because Mussolini was a fascist in every sense of the word. He was a bloodthirsty murderer who was personally responsible for the death of millions of people. That's who Mussolini was. Charlie Kirk doesn't even come remotely close to the evil that Mussolini personifies. Not even in the same realm of evil. Mussolini was one of the worst human beings to ever live. Charlie Kirk was a loudmouth asshole who hated people and liked to tell people how much he hated people. These are not the same thing at all. Excion. Would living in a dictatorship be so bad? Couldn't you get used to it? Being kind of sarcastic, or maybe not. Okay. If you want order and you want routine, if you enjoy a lack of personal interests or opportunities, and you believe that a well-ordered society where everybody has a role and understands their role and willingly gives up every reason or pleasure in life to be human, to have a life. If you like systems where that's the reality for people, is that their humanity is compromised because they want a well-ordered system, then a dictatorship is exactly what you're looking for. If you value personal, intellectual, and emotional freedom, and if you enjoy a society where ideas and the free flow of ideas and thereby invention and progress and forward movement is part of the picture, if you want all those things, then you can't have that under a dictatorship. They don't go together. So it really comes down to what kind of world do you want to live in as to whether a dictatorship is a good or a bad thing, right? There are a lot of great features to a dictatorship and all of the apparatus that has to go into place in order to maintain a dictatorship over time. It has a lot of features, right? It can be a very outwardly peaceful society. It can look like there's not a lot of crime. It can look like everything is under great control. The only problem with a dictatorship is that it violates every single instinct within us to be an individual. And if we go with, something like Jonathan Haidt and his theory of moral foundations, in his book, The Righteous Mind, he talks about how human beings are 90% bee and 10% chimp, right? And so 90% of our behavior is being driven by social forces and by, our place in a social hierarchy and in a social system. But 10% of us is keenly interested in our individuality and in being an individual. And that's a lot. And that's enough that we upset the apple cart every time we try to put systems in place that deny or take rights away from that 10% of us. And we can't live that way. We find ourselves miserable and anxious and depressed and very, very easily upset, and we don't get along and we don't play nice with each other when we deny that 10%. So that's probably as objective an answer as I can give about a dictatorship. Yeah, there you go. X-Sign, what's your favorite vegetable? I don't have one. I don't like vegetables. I will say corn, because sure, I like corn. And last question for today. Jenny Walker. Jenny Walker, wow. A couple of years ago, you had an insider informant. Whatever happened to that person? Do you still talk to them? Did they get out? Yes, I think they just recently got out. I think there was somebody who came out on Reddit a couple weeks ago who I think was that inside person, but I haven't asked them. I need to, it just occurred to me like literally 2 days ago. I was like, wait a minute, is this person on Reddit that same guy I was talking to? I have to reach out and ask him. Otherwise, if that person who just came out on Reddit isn't that person, I don't know what happened to them because they just stopped answering my communications. I was, this insider, this person who labeled themselves as Scientology insider. So yeah. Oh, are potatoes? Oh, I guess potatoes are considered a vegetable. Oh, I love potatoes. I've never. Oh my God! Now I'm being caught out for being stupid. I've never. I know, I'm being a complete idiot right now. I did not realize that potatoes were a vegetable. Oh, you were catching me in a moment of incredible stupidity right now. Oh, this is awesome. This is awesome. I love potatoes. I eat potatoes all the time. I have like all kinds of things I do with potatoes. Because I like baked potatoes. I like mashed potatoes. I like potato croquettes. I use potatoes a lot. I like breakfast potatoes. Anyway, wow. Okay, feeling kind of stupid right now. I missed a couple of these last ones. Let's see if we can slam these in. Lutz asks, lately I've been drawn in by those American expats sharing their views on how strange the U.S. actually appears once you have an external view. Any takers? Yeah, I get it, Lutz. I feel exactly the same way. I mean, after you leave the country and get a perspective from a foreign country, even for a short period of time, if you're paying attention, America starts looking really strange and really screwed up. I agree. I agree that you can get some very interesting perspectives. And I've read from many, many videos and watched many things about people in expat communities in Germany and Mexico, in Spain, in UK, sharing, how life is for them now that they've left America and all these pluses and, benefits to it. I wish I could financially afford to do that, but I can't. So you did, and I guess my defense is that I was in a cult. That's right. No, my defense is that I'm an idiot. I just never thought about it. As far as the potato thing goes, somebody comments, right? I just watched live a grown man discover potatoes are a vegetable. I know. I literally never gave a thought my entire life to what a potato is. So I never thought about it that way. I've always loved potatoes. I love French fries. But I just never thought about it. When people say vegetable to me, I start thinking about Brussels sprouts or cauliflower or green beans or lima beans or something. And I can't stand any of that. The running joke in my life for most of my life is that I'm allergic to chlorophyll. If it's green, I'm not interested, right? Now, since I've learned to cook and I can cook things for myself now and I can make things way better than they were served to me at earlier points in my life. My mom has acknowledged many times that she is a horrible cook and did not do a good job cooking for us when we were kids. I got served the worst possible version of, all of the above when I was growing up, and I hated vegetables. And if it was green, yeah, Chris ain't keen. You got it. That's exactly right. I just straight up, I'm allergic to green. So that was kind of how I thought of things. And that's my lame ass excuse. It's not because I was in a cult. Antonio asks, do you believe in reincarnation? I believe in a cycle in the universe of matter recycling and energy recycling. Right? We are made of star stuff. The atoms that were in stars are now in us, right? That's how the universe works. So in that sense, I believe in a kind of, reincarnation. I believe that if there is a thing that makes up life that is separate to this body, if there's some other life energy, that it will somehow recycle because that's the nature of the universe. But that's about as much thought as I give it. But 1, 2, 3, final question. Did anyone have success in Scientology of not being an asshole and being nice? Yes, you do have lower level successes being a nice person in Scientology, but you will not get promoted and you will not rise to the top if you are a nice person. It won't happen. It just won't. You will, and you kind of see how that works when you're in, right? The people who are the hardworking producers are the people who are the most overbearing and dominating people in the group, and they're the ones who rise all the way up until they make a mistake and then they get busted, and then, you know, some other asshole has to rise. But that's generally how it works in those cult hierarchies, as I've noticed. Nice people do not rise. They may rise to a certain level, but there's a point where it's going to get in your way. Yeah. Okay. And there we go, guys. I'm going to wrap up now. Thank you very much for coming around and watching me blabber on at a mad rate about all of this. Your viewership is always appreciated, and as is your support. Thanks for coming around. Thanks for letting me share some of my life with you and some of my opinions and ideas. Again, please support the channel through Patreon, PayPal, whatever form of love you want to throw my way. I got this book. You can check it out on Amazon. And as I mentioned earlier in the show, eventually there will be another book. And on that happy note, I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.